We've been looking for the past several Sundays on temptations that are common to man. And today, I want to bring that to a close. But we've looked at several different ones. We've looked at pride. Pride is a common temptation that we're all drawn into. Alcohol, which was kind of reflected back to the idea of using some kind of an outside substance to dull our minds. Also, we looked at apathy, kind of an indifference to what the Word of God says. We hear it, but we don't apply it. That's a temptation that the enemy sends our way. Not only that, but greed. Greed, this is mine. We hold on to the things of this world. And last week we spoke about lust, which was a powerful topic. But all of these have led us down to this very last one that I want to share with you today. And that's the temptation to believe the lie. The lie that Satan has been playing off on us since the day you were born, since the day this world was born, since the very beginning. He's been playing off a lie to us, basically, that there is no more than this. This is all there is. Think about it. Is that not what the world thinks? Is that not what is in an unbeliever's mind? That this is all there is? You know, we pretend like Satan is this... we watch the movies and we think Satan's all about heads twisting around or spitting up pea soup or some crazy junk like that. Folks, his offensive weapon against you is the lie. Yes. The lie. That is his main weapon. As we have the sword of the Spirit as our offensive weapon, he has the weapon of the lie, which distorts the sword of the Spirit. Takes the edge off of it. A man named Harry Blimmers, I think that's his name, I think I said it correctly. But I read this week and I thought it was really good. He said to become a Christian is to accept an extra dimension to life. From the Christian's point of view, the notable thing about the unbeliever's world is how much smaller it is. You ever think about that? How much smaller it is. I'll explain it to you here. He says, the unbeliever is imprisoned in a decaying universe. Imagine for a minute you take a child to the theater to see some tragedy like Hamlet, at the end of which the stage is just littered with corpses. You know, the end of Hamlet, everybody dies. Well, and suppose you had the difficulty of comforting that child that you took to that play afterward. He was so distressed as he seen the spectacle of all these deaths on the stage. And you try to tell him and you say, but the man who played Hamlet, he's not really dead, you explain. You see, he's an actor. He also lives a life outside this theater. He has a wife and a family, and far from being dead, he's probably now at home enjoying a late supper. If there's one word the Christian secretly wants to use to describe the unbeliever's outlook, it is literal. Like the child who takes the play for reality. You want to know why you're greedy? You don't really believe that you think this is all there is. You want to know why you have to fulfill your lust? You want to know? Because you think that this is all there is. You want to know why you have to dull your mind with all these outside substances? Because you think this is all there is. You know why you're apathetic towards the Word of God? You don't apply it to your life after you hear it? Because you believe that this world is all there is. Folks, let's look at what we actually do rather than what we say. Let's look at ourselves. Let's see. I was looking while we were singing. Run around here and find me a hymnal. It was at the back. He was singing this song, Brethren, we have met to worship. Now listen, it says, see poor sinners round about you, slumbering on the brink of woe. Death is coming, hell is moving. Can you bear to let them go? See our fathers, listen to that, and our mothers, and our children sinking down. And yet when did you sing that? Did you just think, man, think about that. That's true. That's true. They're sinking down. And I was listening to that song and I was thinking, my goodness. My goodness. Do we know? Or have we bought the lie that all these people outside in this world believe? Have we bought the lie that the play is the reality. What's the difference? The attitude. I've got a couple of questions for you this morning, but they're going to begin in 1 John chapter 3, verse 19. If you'll turn over there in your Bibles, we're going to read that verse. I'll ask you to stand for the reading of the Word of God for that particular verse when you find it. 1 John 3:19. And it says, "And hereby we know that we are of the truth, and shall assure our hearts before Him." You may be seated. Let's pray. In Jesus' blessed name. Amen. Amen. Here in 1 John 3:19, he says here, "Hereby we know." Can you know that you know that you know that you know the Lord? Can you know that? 1 John is all about knowing that. Knowing who He is. Knowing if you truly have the truth. The problem is, there are a lot of people that don't want to know the truth. Oh, they say they want to know the truth. They want everybody else to think they want to know the truth. They want everyone else to believe that they're following Jesus. If I was to ask for a show of hands today, and I said, how many people here are unbelievers? You don't believe a word of this Bible I'm telling you. No one would raise their hand. No one would, because we're in church. Now, if we were somewhere else, they might talk to me a little different. They might share their misgivings, their doubts, their confusion about things. But right here in church, they're not going to do that. So I'm asking you this morning, do you really want to know the truth? Do you want to pull the facade aside? Do you want to see how things really are? Because there are people who really don't want Jesus. They like to think everybody knows that, but they don't really know Him. There's a particular movie. I advise you, if you ever watch it, to watch the TV version, because there's some vulgar language in it. There's a movie called The Matrix. Ever heard of that movie, maybe? Shake your head, no, yes. In The Matrix, there's this character named Neo, and he is living his regular life. And this character shows up, and he tells him everything you think is real isn't. Everything you think is real isn't really real. And he says, well, he begins to think about these things. Well, the reality is, remember, this is a sci-fi movie. He's actually hooked into a machine where they're pumping these ideals into his head that all these things are going on while the machine is using him. So the man comes up to him and he offers him a pill. He says, here's a red pill. And he says, if you take this red pill, I believe I'm right on that if I remember correctly. If you take this red pill, your eyes will be open. You'll come out of that machine, you'll see things how they really are. Or you can take this blue pill and you can forget it all. So a lot of people just want to like to live in their ignorance. Live in the ignorance of what the truth really is. Folks, today we're looking here, and you've got the opportunity to choose the reality or to choose the blue pill. Maybe some of you have been on a diet of blue pills for a while. Maybe you like to just act like, I do just enough for everybody to think I'm going to church, or just enough for people to think I've really got this relationship with God, but I really don't. I remember Jesus, when He was walking, and He walked upon this man. He was near this pool where they could put him down into it, and he was trying to get in this pool so he could be healed. And Jesus goes up to him in John 5:6, and He says to him, when Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, He said to him, wilt thou be made whole? Seems like a crazy question, doesn't it? Why would you ask somebody who's been sitting here for all these years trying to get made whole, why would you ask them that? Because some people think they want to know the truth, but they really don't. We play games in our head. We play games in our heart. And we don't really deal with the real issues that need to be taken care of. We play around with these things. Folks, I want to ask you today, before we go any farther, do you want to deal with the truth? Now, he asked a question here in verse 19 too. He said, and hereby we know. How do you know that you really are living in the truth? Hereby. What does that mean? Hereby. Let's go back a verse. Verse 18. He says, my little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. You mean we can just love in word and tongue, and it don't really mean nothing unless we do it in deed and in heartfelt sincerity? Is that true? Here's the second question I want to ask for those of you who may be believers here today. Do you want a real confidence toward God? Do you really want to know that you know God? Do you want to come before His presence boldly? Look down here at verses 20 through 22. He says, "For if our heart condemn us," maybe you're in that condition, your heart's condemning you. "For if our heart condemn us, God is greater than our heart, and knoweth all things. Beloved, if our heart condemn us not, then have we confidence toward God. And whatsoever we ask, we receive of Him, because we keep His commandments and do those things which are pleasing in His sight." Which are pleasing in His sight. So when our actions aren't aligning with our words, we lose confidence in our relationship with Jesus Christ. And can I tell you something? You should. You should lose confidence. You know why? Because you're not exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit that is inside of you. You are holding Him back from doing the things in the world that He wants to do. You are doing that. Even if the Holy Spirit is living inside of you and you are living in this fake facade, you need to question to see if you really know God. Because love is God. You know what it says? God is love. And Bill was talking earlier about how all the people out here think we're haters. People think we're haters. They all think we're haters. Well, folks, it's all about love. And if I see you in sin and I don't tell you about that sin, I don't love you. Right? But you know what some Christians in the past under that have done? They took a great big old log and they kind of, "You sinner, bam!" There ain't no love in that. There ain't no love in that. There's no love in that. No love whatsoever. Whatsoever. So, well, I haven't hit nobody. Actually, I don't say a whole lot about him at all. Well, then, you're kind of on the other side of that spectrum, aren't you? You don't really show any love. You don't really show Him within your heart. Folks, let's get down serious. You want to get back to the relationship you had. Remember when you first came to the altar, or wherever it was that you were saved, you came up and you just felt new all over. You just felt like you could take on the world. But then you started living life. And you started leaning back into those old ideas that, well, you know, maybe I ought to be a little greedy. Maybe it's okay for me to be a little proud about things. You know, I don't have to do everything the Word of God says. It really doesn't matter to me. It's just lust. Everybody does it. Right? Isn't that what we say? And we think about the things in this world and don't think about what is to come. J. Vernon McGee talked about this relationship that we have with God. He said he knew a young man who was struggling with alcoholism. And the man came to him and he said, "I prayed about this." And he told him, he said, "Pray some more. Pray some more." And he said, "Well, I just don't feel like I have any assurance about it. I failed him so much." And he told him, "Well, God knows your heart." Listen to this. God knows your heart. The way you're talking to me, I believe you're sincere. And I believe you mean business. I know that God is going to give you deliverance from this. Of course, you don't have any assurance because you failed Him. But He is greater than your heart, and He knows you, and He knows you're sincere, and He's going to deal with you. You can depend on it. You can depend on it. We know God is holding us. We aren't holding Him. But we lack assurance. We lack power in our prayer life because we forget that. Why? Because we don't live like we should live. You see? And so we lose the power that God has given us. We don't pray with assurance. Who's that person that you want to have on your prayer? You want to be on their prayer list? That person that you look at and say, "I want to be on their, I need to go talk with them, because they got this connection, And that's the thing. They see the connection. You see the connection that they have with God. You see that they actually believe what this book says. They actually believe that there is more to this life than where we are at. They actually believe there is a God and He is in control and He has power. They actually believe that. And the question sometimes I think we ought to ask ourselves is, do we? Do we? Do we believe that He'll get us through this? When the early church was facing persecution, you know what the first thing they said was? In Acts 4:24, they said, Lord, thou art God. Maybe we ought to begin our prayers like that. Lord, thou art God. Do you really believe that no matter what kind of trouble comes through that door, or what kind of things that are coming down upon the church, or whatever's going to happen, Lord, thou art God. You're in control, and I'm going to trust you through this. No matter what else may come up, I'm trusting you to give me the ability to get through that. And you know what? If they kill me in the process, I'm going to open my eyes in heaven and have joy forevermore. Right? Do you really believe that? Or is it just lip service? Is it just words that we say? Do we really trust what God's Word has given to us? Are we really listening to what He says and know that He's in charge? Well, if you want to have that kind of confidence, if you want to be the individual who come up to you and say, would you mind praying a few things for me because I see you've got a little connection with God? Look here to the next few verses. Look at your outward example. Look at your outward example. 1 John chapter 3, verse 23. He says, and this is His commandment. This is the commandment of God, that we should believe on the name of His Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another as He has gave us commandment. That's pretty simple, ain't it? Hard to imply and hard to do sometimes, but very simple. And he that keepeth His commandments dwelleth in Him, and He in him. And hereby we know that He abideth in us by the Spirit which He hath given us. Notice that. Don't tell me that you know Him, but you don't love him or her. You hear me? Don't tell me that you know Him and you don't love him or her. Why? Why? Because what did He say? This is His commandment. You believe on the name of His Son, Jesus Christ, and you love one another. He that keepeth His commandments does what? Dwelleth in Him. Oh, I'm not talking about, I love you, brother. I'm not talking about every once in a while I need to give him a hug. I'm talking about sincerity. Really love. Really love. Not just, well, I love him. I mean, really love them. Even when they're ugly. Even when they're mean. Even when they're hateful. Even when they smell funny. No matter how they act, do you really love them? See, when you get a big picture view, the world looks a whole lot different. The world looks a whole lot different. Because that soul, whether it be mean, ugly, smelly, whatever, Jesus Christ died for them. Did you hear that? It doesn't matter if they smacked your face one time. Jesus Christ died for them. I never will forget the time I was working at Berkeley. This little fellow smacked me in the face. Man, I tried to hold on to that old thing my mom told me in the scripture. Said he turned the other cheek to him. It's hard, ain't it? Hard. But folks, you love them, know the big picture. The big picture. Not the little picture. Not the literal picture. The literal picture, you ought to be like some of these other people calling to have somebody killed if they interfere with what you want or something like that. You know, that's the little picture. But the big picture says that everybody Jesus died for. The most precious died for the most unprecious of all. And on the height of all those was me and you. He died for us. And when we lose sight of that big picture, we don't see the outward world for what it truly is. We don't understand the inside reality. Romans 8:9 says, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now, if any man have the Spirit of Christ, have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of His. Now, if God is love, and His Spirit dwelleth in you, shouldn't we be different? Shouldn't we have that love within our hearts? Shouldn't we have that joy beyond understanding in our hearts toward everybody? Everybody? No matter how they are or what they do? Well, let's look at another thing. We looked at the outward example. Let's examine our inward testing. Look at 1 John 4, 1 through 3 here. He says, Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out in the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already is it in the world. I hope y'all will have opportunity to come out to the prophecy study we're doing. I hope you'll take opportunity to hear that. You'll hear more about this idea of Antichrist. But did you know the Antichrist spirit is already in the world? Folks, if you can't see that, turn on your TV. People hate Jesus at this point in time. More so, I think, than maybe they've ever before. The devil tries two things. He either tries to turn the whole church off to something foolish and something beyond what Jesus is, or he tries to turn the whole world against the church to persecute them. It's one way or it's the other. He's very old, but he don't change his tricks too often. It's the same old thing. The same old thing over and over. So we've got to watch out for false doctrine. When you start living your life with a biblical worldview, you'll be able to see the crooks and the charlatans. You'll see them. Now, in John's day here, when he was writing this down, he was specifically, they had this teaching that said Jesus Christ didn't even come in the flesh. He was God. Because we're coming right from the point where he's healing all these people and they're seeing all these amazing things. So he wasn't even a man, they were saying. He said, no, he was a man. He was fully man and he was fully God at the same time. And so he was clarifying that. He was talking that false doctrine. Today, people will tell you Jesus wasn't God. And then he did come in the flesh. You see how things just go back and forth over time, but the same old things hold on. And he says here to guard yourself against the false spirits. Now, like I said, we've been going through these different temptations. Do you think pride in a Christian's heart is a false spirit? God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Do you think that alcohol gets into your heart, or any kind of false thing to try to dull your mind like that, when that gets into your life, that doesn't ruin you? Remember how we talked about, he said, be not filled with the, he told us not to gain into the alcohol which is in excess, but be ye filled with the Spirit. Right? Be not drunk with alcohol in excess like that. Do you think that apathy, when we turn our side, we hear what God says and we turn away from it, that isn't a false spirit of God? When we hear what God tells us to do very plainly and yet we just ignore it over and over? Do you think that greedy heart, that says, mine, right here in this world, do you think that ain't a false spirit? You think that lust that draws up inside of you, and you think I've got to fulfill that lust right now? I've got to do this thing right now because I have no other choice? Do you think that ain't a false spirit? Folks, do you discern the false spirits, or are they like a highway on you? Are those false spirits running all over you all the time? Discern the truth. Discern it. Do you really want to come to the end of your life and say, well, God, I was involved in all these different things and I never really changed any. Nothing ever happened in my life. I never grew whatsoever. He says that all of these are the spirit of Antichrist. John says earlier in this letter, he says in 1 John 2:18, he says, little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, speaking to that one, y'all hear about prophecy in the future, that ultimate Antichrist. Even now there are many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. And then again we read in 1 John 2:22, who is a liar but he that denieth Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist and denieth the Father and the Son. When you look at this word Antichrist, it can mean two different things. It can either mean against Christ or instead of Christ. If all your life is about all these different temptations and they control you, are you having imitation of Christ? If you made up a Jesus in your mind that you follow each Sunday, this Jesus, he always agrees with everything you think. He always thinks that it's pretty wise to be in love with that person. They sing. You know? Your Jesus says, well, it's okay to have a few drinks. Won't hurt you. Your Jesus says, it's okay to take a look online and see that dirty ministry. It won't hurt much. Your Jesus says, what have you got? You've got the spirit of Antichrist, which leads an imitation. You better check him out. Right? Not check him out, but check him out of the hotel room. Get him away. You understand? Folks, we need to be discerners of what's the truth and what isn't. We need to understand that there is a change that takes place in the individual. The world can't see this. The world is blind to this. You may have heard of Charles Dickens. Remember heard of Charles Dickens? Charles Dickens, I've been listening to some of his stuff. Charles Dickens, he's in schools. They listen, they read Charles Dickens. I remember reading him Great Expectations when I was in school. Maybe you heard about him in your English literature class or whatever. But the world doesn't even realize that all of his books are based on Christian ideals. They don't even see that. Therefore, they probably wouldn't let him into the school. You know? Charles Dickens said, all my strongest illustrations are derived from the New Testament. All my social abuses are shown as departures from its spirit. All my good people are humble, charitable, faithful, forgiving over and over again. I claim them in expressed words as disciples of the founder of our religion. He even wrote a book once where he did a harmony of the Gospels and he put them all together just for his kids. Charles Dickens did this. Well, have you ever heard the Christmas Carol? You probably see that and probably think you've got Scrooge in it. Old man Scrooge. Everybody looks at that and they say, well, that's outside the story of Christmas and all the, it's not really has anything to do with Christmas whatsoever. Well, the title of that particular book is A Christmas Carol, which back during Dickens' time, everybody would have understood. That's a song celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. Not only that, Dickens, when he did this, when he put this book together, he didn't call the chapters in his books chapters. He called them staves, which meant this is the stanzas of a song. The stanzas of a song. The world doesn't see this. Did you know that the character in it, remember Bob Cratchit at the first of it? He's got this, Scrooge has got all this money and he's really mean to this one old guy who's his only employee. He only gives him one piece of coal to put in the oven and he's freezing to death all the time. He's really mean to that one person. Did you know Bob Cratchit's name is a derivative of cratch, which is an old English word that meant the manger of baby Jesus. So old Scrooge was cruel to baby Jesus. Not only that, when the ghost of Jacob Marley, his old business partner, shows up, he sees him coming into the room. There's all sorts of ghosts in that story. But there's this ghost of Jacob Marley. He comes up and he walks through the door and he's transparent and he sees completely through him. And when he's watching him, he looks at him and Scrooge says, Dickens writes, Scrooge had often heard it said that Marley had no bowels, but he had never believed it until now. If you don't understand 1 John, you wouldn't understand that what he's talking about there is, in the book of 1 John, it talks about the bowels of compassion within our heart. He had no compassion, is what he's saying. And for that reason, this guy Marley, that was the reason for his eternal damnation. Because what was Dickens saying? If you don't have love in your heart, then you hate with God. Ain't that what we just read? If you don't have love in your heart, then you're not with God. It goes on further throughout it. When the ghost of Christmas past shows up to Scrooge, he experiences what? Regret. Regret for the things he has done. When the spirit of Christmas present shows up, he experiences repentance. He wished he had done it a different way. He wants to turn away from it. When the spirit of Christmas future shows up, he is so scared and upset, he prays for forgiveness as he leaves him. He prays for salvation. That's the ABCs of salvation right there in that book. But the world doesn't see it. The world can't see the things of God. They're blind to them, folks. They're blind to them. One guy I got some of this information from, he said, Dickens wrote his story. The people of his day readily understood the biblical meaning. But tragically, the Bible no longer provides the foundation for the common language of people in our society. In other words, people don't ever read this book. And you know what else? They don't apply this book to their lives. They don't let it change them. They go on without the bowels of compassion. And there's churchgoers, it's become a regular theme that you see the angry old deacon. Now, we're going to get a deacon today. He ain't going to be like him. But the angry old deacon, you'll see a picture of him. He looks all mean and hateful. Folks, that's not Jesus. Jesus is love. Jesus is love for everyone around. So we need to examine ourselves. Can you discern the truth? Are you losing these spiritual battles over and over again with temptation because you're not allowing the truth in your life? Are you following Christ or are you following the Antichrist? Which one is it? Which one will it be? This is how the world will see our difference. Verses 4 through 6 here in 1 John 4. He says, "Ye are of God little children, and have overcame them. Because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world." Now, how do you know it's you? "They are of the world, therefore speak they of the world, and the world heareth them. We are of God. He that knoweth God heareth us. He that is not of God heareth not us. Hereby know we the spirit of truth and the spirit of error." Folks, if the truth is in you, people will see it. And you know what? The truth always causes confrontation. Always causes confrontation. There'll be a confrontation in this world. Why? Because you don't really live here anymore. When you got saved, it's going to cause some problems. They're not going to like your attitude towards things now. You say, "Well, everybody likes love." Their idea of love and God's idea of love is two different things, isn't it? I just want to ask you today, are you truly following Christ, or are you following an imitation? Folks, it'd be sad if it was that last day and to say, "I never knew you. I never knew you." That's Scripture, folks. He says that. I never knew you. Do you have the bowels of compassion? Real compassion. That you're willing to stand on the truth? Do you have it? But let's get something. Thanks for watching. I hope today's sermon has spoken to your heart. If you need to speak with someone about what was discussed in this sermon, you can find our phone number at our church's Facebook page, or we would love for you to come meet us at one of our regular meetings in person. Sunrise is located directly off exit 23 off of Interstate 81 in Tennessee. We regularly meet Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. for small group Bible studies and then at 10:50 a.m. for worship. We also meet Sunday evenings for worship at 6:30 p.m. and Wednesday nights for discipleship training at 6:30 p.m. We would love for your family to meet our family, and again, thank you for watching and sharing this program with others.